So I have everybody's permission to record. You got Jeff and Chris and Evelyn.
Yep.
Okay, good. So I don't get in trouble. Because I tell you what, seems to be getting in trouble. I get in trouble all the time. All right. So, well, can you pull up the I think on page 6, I guess, page 6, and then enlarge the section elevation there. Okay. The first thing I was asked, I'll just start right off the bat. Okay, I top down, right? I have my notes. The setback. Whoosh. Where's that? Okay, my notes. There we go. All the upper story setback, stairway enclosure. Okay. My understanding of the code, which is applicable standard section 5.37, device standard exceptions 5.371, right? Height exceptions B.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
6. Yeah, 5 and you. Yeah.
5.3. This here, okay, from the top of the roof is supposed to go, whatever this elevation here, or this height is here, 1 foot per every foot. Am I not correct?
So, yeah, let me go to the actual elevations. That's just a diagram to show us what's going on inside the building. So hold on, let me figure this out.
Well, and the other thing is, how can you tell anything from a drawing that's so scantily dimensioned?
Well, let's do one thing at a time here. We'll just let Jeff.
This is part of my confusion.
Sure.
Yeah.
So let's let Jeff describe.
Yeah, we
how he's
spend a lot of time reviewing this. That's how,
Okay.
especially this site, because they are. I'm looking for the best thing. So here's the most recent. So that section talks about height exceptions, and so everything above the maximum height, which in this case is 35 feet, has to be set back 1 foot for every foot of height encroachment above 35 feet. So unoccupied stairwell enclosures can exceed the height by 12 feet. So what we do is first thing we do is we establish the base plane, and then building height is measured from the base plane to the uppermost point of the structure. So everything above 35 feet from the base plane has to be set back 1 foot for each foot in height. It's not the entire stairwell enclosure. It's everything part of the stairwell enclosure above 35 feet has to be set back 1 foot for 1 foot. And that's what is kind of going on here.
Let me back up then. Let me see, because that's unclear. All right. Applicable standards. Here you go. Each over penthouses may project through the bulk plane, may exceed the maximum height in by 12 feet. Okay. Close to 12 feet.
So here's a good illustration of that.
Okay.
Whoops. This is a different version of Acrobat. So here, well, first of all, there's 2 base planes going on, one for each building. They switched to a building independent base plane.
Right.
So here's the south base plane, is somewhere in this black area.
5390.
Yeah. 5390.5.
Which would be almost near to the current elevation, which is 5390, right? 5395.
Yeah.
It's a half.
So
a foot off.
35 feet from that, which is this number right here. Here's the line, and so 1 foot for each foot of height encroachment, and that's what they're showing with this.
Let me see here. Let me go back here, maybe.
Actually, the max height is right here. Is this line right here? So here's the max height. So every portion of the building at the setback line that's above this has to be set back 1 foot for each foot in height, and that's why there's a sloping roof right here. So that's how the entire stairwell enclosure is not above 35 feet. It's only a portion of it.
Jeff, the 1-to-1 foot up and foot back is
yeah.
actually depicted on that left hand.
Yeah, and here's a graphic depiction of that right there. So this kind of shows how that they're meeting that.
I mean, get on board with it, because my eyes are, like I said, you can show it up on that screen. I got to squint. Maximum height is 35 foot. So we can project over.
Yeah, it could go up to 42, 47?
Right.
Yeah.
12 feet?
Yeah. But there are design limitations, and one of them is the one-to-one setback.
Like I said, once again, how do you discern whether that height is right?
Because we did the base plane calculations, and so once you establish the base plane, I can these are scale drawings. We can measure from the base plane to the height.
That's my trouble. I'm not able to measure, and so
well, you can do the math too.
Right. I mean, is there? Here I have a base plane, so every measurement goes up to here. This should be 35 feet.
Mm-hmm.
There should be an elevation depicted here, right, or something.
Yeah. So
maximum height, but I can't understand.
So their base plane is set at -7 feet 9 inches. Now,
negative. Okay.
Yeah. So some architects choose to be a little bit more difficult on how they set how they notate their elevations. Sometimes they set the base plane at 0. Sometimes they set it at some arbitrary number. But the key is that we should be able to subtract this from this to get the height. And so, but it
from
does
the maximum parapet height.
So 27 maximum height 27 3 inches minus 7 foot 9 inches equals 35 feet.
Okay, so that is the maximum height of the building, 27.3.
Yeah, from the base plane.
From the base plane.
Yeah.
And
so these are the height encroachments right here. Everything above this line that the cursor's on is the height encroachment. So it is set back 1 foot for every foot of encroachment over that 35 feet, which is why you have a sloping roof here and you have a sloping roof here.
right. Yeah.
So that's that building, and it's the same on the northern building too. It's the same on the...
Because to me, what needed to be done was, okay, you have the setback like this,
Mhm.
right? The stairwell is 12 feet high, let's say, right? So every foot, you go in first horizontally, then up.
Yeah.
No. There's an actual setback there.
Yeah,
Right.
so, I mean...
See what I mean?
Yeah.
So I got 12 feet here, and the setback starts 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, and then you can start building.
Yeah. Well, that's
Right.
that's kind of what's happening here, except it's a continuous structure.
Kinda.
It's more like a bulk plane than a...
Right, that's exactly what I was going to say. It was like in the other diagrams that I've seen and reading about bulk plane, instead of doing this, what you're doing is you're going directly up from the top of the building,
And then a one-to-one slope.
and then you're sloping back a 45 degrees.
It achieves the same as far as bulk reduction. Yeah.
I guess.
Would that be fair?
My question was, how can you discern what the height? You have the maximum height 35 feet, maximum height south is 35, and that figure below is 27.3 is the actual height of the building. Okay, right?
Well, if you were to measure it from the ground, it would appear to be a different height, because the base plane is what establishes how we measure heights.
In this case, Jeff, the base plane is essentially grade.
No, it's not. You can. You can see. You can. Well, on the southern building, you could. What makes it difficult is the black here, but the base plane is actually
It's an elevation,
a little bit below grade on this one. So yeah. See up here, here's the.
Because you have different base planes.
Yeah. So on this building, the base plane comes.
Or something like that.
Yeah, and so they went from a single base plane over the entire site,
Right.
to a building-specific base plane. And so you have to take the average of all four corners of each building, and what's either lower is existing grade or proposed grade is established as their base plane. And so that's what they did. So each building is slightly, and it may be at grade at certain perspectives, but it's below grade at other perspectives, and it's above grade at others, because it's an average. So, but
Right.
it's, yeah.
Can you go to page 2? I want to show you. And then page 2. Okay, zoom in here. That's the survey.
Whoops. I'm not sure I like this dynamic zoom. Let me get off of this. There we go.
Okay. 53. This is the retaining wall that is problematic. but that's another story. Our elevation, this is my mother's house right here. Our elevation is 5390. That's real elevation. And 5390 on the end. Actually, about 5389. And just on their side of the wall, you got 5392, 5390. Now it's all been graded back. So, I mean, essentially, this whole lot, with the exception of this little corner right here and this little corner right here, is an average of 5393 to 5392 right here. Actually, 5393 here and here, and 5392 over here. So your base plane, okay, is essentially, because, and then I'm going on the information of what what's his name told me, that their finished grade is going to be pretty much at our finished grade. So that's going to be 5392. Now the base plane that they've calculated out for the second building, southern building, is 5390 and a half, right? So it's about 6 inches above finished grade.
I actually have that. Oh, I thought I printed out the calculations based upon one of the reviews that we did. But I mean, they're on the elevation, but
Yeah.
but I did existing and proposed grades. I have those calculations somewhere. Yeah. So the northern building, both existing and proposed grades were 92.75. So that's that base plane. The southern building, the proposed base plane, or the existing was 90.75, and the proposed was 90.5. So 90.5 is
90.5. So
yeah.
in essence, it's like I said, half a foot over my finished grade. I'm going to say mine is to my mother's. Shorter, right? Okay. And so you're telling me that from that point, essentially grade, the building, the actual building height is 27 feet and 3 inches.
Let's go to the sheet.
I'm just trying to understand the drawings because this is essential, for me to understand before I open my mouth.
So here's the rear.
Right. Okay, so see it up at the top. It says max height, between parentheses, 35 feet. Right?
So the height, it's going to be about, so the base plane, if the base plane was 0, this would be 35 feet. So
this would be 35 feet, right here. That's 35 feet.
It's going to be a little bit less than 35 feet from the grade. Because if the grades were, what did we say they were, 5392? Here, I have the grades on the, 5390. So yeah, they're about 35 feet.
Well,
from grade.
Now, wait, go back to that, please. Okay, now that's a new grade.
No, these are existing grades.
They are not.
These are existing grades as of 2014. I mean, they missed the fine grading. I mean, this is shot from LiDAR or some other thing. So they missed the fine grading at the walls, but this is generally what the grades are.
Okay. It's not. I won't tell you it's not. Okay. I can tell you that the center of the building is about 4 feet of the bottom of the floor, okay, of their foundation. Their grade is about 4 feet above ours. Right? And it slopes down. And it slopes down just like this to about, well, you can count the brick right there. If you go in there, count the brick, and multiply it by, 2.5 inches, you can see what the grade is. So if this is 390, right, and down here 389, that, in the center of that building over there, is not 390. It's 392, 93,
so
like it says.
I don't understand where you're coming from. What are you trying to get at? I don't understand.
Well, I'm just trying to understand the measurements and how you guys measure things.
We measure things based upon the information provided us by the survey. The survey obviously doesn't go on your lot. It doesn't provide grades on your lot. So there's.
I'm not saying that, Jeff.
Yeah, so I don't.
I'm saying I know from a fixed point that's 390 that grade is 4 feet over mine. But
So
now,
are you saying that the survey is inaccurate?
no, I'm saying the survey is accurate.
Oh, okay.
Well, no.
The other picture
So
is not accurate.
here's the grading. Here's the grading plan. This is the grading plan. They're proposed to have grades at 89.8 feet at the property line, thereabouts. 89.7, 89.8.
Okay, so they're going to be
89.8.
below my grade.
It's supposed to be matching grade. So unless you have a survey for your property, the key is that they're tying into grades. They're tying into the grades.
We'll use their survey. No, page 2. Okay, zoom in real good. See the grade mark right there? 5390.
So that's a
See it over here?
contour.
That's a contour. About 5 foot in, okay, because this is 10 foot. Right, 10 foot. I'll say, okay, 10 foot in. About 10 foot in our property on this side is 5389.
Mm-hmm.
Right on the wall, it's 5390. 5390. This one, which is level, okay, this is the front door of the old building, was level to the back, that butts up on our property, or butted, is 5393. Now, you're telling me that other picture, the picture that shows the grade lines in color,
That's his RGIS system there.
okay, says that this grade line is 5390, and that's 4 foot off. Okay? Now, what significance that has at this moment, I can't really tell.
Because existing grades are going to be altered.
Okay,
Yeah.
but back to the drawing. Okay, I can't tell what the height is, and I don't know how you guys guys can tell because you can. It's to scale and you can measure it, but this thing I have no measuring device on. So there's two, and like you said, different architects do different things to confuse people purposely. The maximum height is 35 foot, but then the building height is 27. Where's the maximum height here? I don't see it. Can't be. You can't have 27.3 from the base grade or the base plane match 35 feet from the base plane. It's just, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I think you're just having a little bit of issue, right? Because
Yeah,
the architect
well,
does kind of a
they
you know,
confuse
it's
it.
different, right?
Right.
He sets a 0 line here,
Okay.
right? And that's obviously
So.
7+ feet
Right.
between here, right? So if you add the 7-ish
Seven.
feet to what he's showing as an elevation reference here at 27.3, you end up at 34 plus, so somewhere south of 35 feet, which is the maximum height, which is what he's showing here, right?
Wow.
So
What's worthwhile with the good old days? So you have the dimension. It's got two. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
right,
Put-
I mean it's
you
not
put
as
a-
easy
you
as
put
drawing a
an
tractor
air-
part in AutoCAD, right? Because
Right.
we've got to deal with multiple grades across multiple
Well-
buildings, and so these things definitely do get complicated, which we totally understand. So.
You know, it's. I mean, I used to draw plans.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes...
This stuff was unacceptable.
Well,
It was not the way I was taught.
Well, and that might be the case, but as long
Today, I
as
guess
we
it's
can
different.
verify that they're meeting the
Exactly.
standards, we're fine with it. I'm not going to nitpick their notation system. I mean, it makes our job harder, yeah, but I think we were able to verify that it's meeting the 35-foot high limit.
Okay, well.
So, yeah.
That's something that's going to be addressed when you got somebody looking at a set of plans that is scrutinizing it from their point
Absolutely.
of view.
No, some
hard.
architects do a much better job of notating this, and this one, for whatever reason, I don't know. I'm not a trained architect, so that they chose their base levels the way they did, and we go from there. So,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay, what's the next point? I guess I'll go and see what that means according to base planes. But, I mean, coming back onto the point, now you're going to tell me that their actual grade is going to be lower than mine.
Per their grading plan, they're supposed to be matching grade. So if there's a little bit of disconnect between that, they'll have
What's
to
a
fix
little bit?
Well, if there's a few inches of disconnect, they have
It's
to
a
fix
foot.
it. You know, I don't know if it is or not, but they're going to have to because their grading plan is showing it at 89
Okay.
at the property line. So
So
and which is about where it's about where you're at. So,
Well, I mean, I can convince you by it's going to take me 2 weeks to get a survey, and it'll cost me about $1,800, but
So
we could probably dig up a survey.
yeah. So here,
I'm gonna
they're,
tell
they're
you,
saying it's a
your
little,
survey.
little bit above 80, 88,
Okay,
or 89.
89.8.
It goes from 89 to a little bit higher, and then it goes back down a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's
So.
recorded. 90. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. Thank you for correcting me. Yeah, 89.8. Okay, now I'm back.
Yeah, because one of the earlier versions they had a wall there, and
they should
were
still
and
have
they,
a wall.
and they were raising the site. We said, hey, there's no reason to raise the site. You can meet grades, and when they revised the building, they met grades. They designed it so they could meet grades. So, I mean, that was something that we talked to them about. One of the first versions showed a retaining wall on the property line, but it was a retaining wall up. So there's no point in doing that. So change your design, and they actually lowered the building. They lowered the whole site to meet grade there. And that was one of the things in your last email is like what's changed between the first version and what's been approved. One of the big changes is that they had to lower the building. They lowered the building about a foot to meet our definition of height and stories, because their initial proposal they were exceeding. They might not have been exceeding it in height, but they were exceeding it in stories based upon one of those 4 criteria. So they went back and revised it and lowered the northern building. So the southern building is a 3-story building. It is a 3-story building by appearances. It's a 3-story building by zoning, how we measure zoning, but it's allowed to be 3 stories because the site slopes from the front property line down. So they're allowed that additional story. At the front, what they want from is from a 3-story building to a 2-story building under the zoning, even though part of the basement level or the ground level is exposed. But they had to lower the building to do that. So that's what they did.
It doesn't matter if the grade is 1%, 0.5%. Just as a slope, as long as the grade.
It's not that specific. The zoning's not that specific. It just said if the property slopes from the front property line to the rear property line, then they're allowed an additional story. That might be something that needs to be cleaned up, but we're going off the rules that
you said
as they're written. So
it's the rear property line is no longer the rear property line.
it's not. It's from the front property line, sloping from the front property line.
To the rear.
That's what it's a.
Does not say to the rear.
It does not say to the rear.
Oh, okay, let's go to that one.
Do you have the older code?
I did not bring the older code. I can go get it.
Because it changed. But even under the new code, I think
It didn't change.
Yeah, I think under the new code.
We can pull it up on the screen.
Let me see. Where's my notes? Notes. Let me get this out of the way. Notes.
Where the lot slopes down from the primary street lot line, 1 story that is additional to the specified number of stories might be built in the rear 50%.
Okay, that is.
That's the new language. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. New language. Newer than the 14 vision?
There was a handful of, more than a handful of zoning amendments that went through in July.
Okay.
So I'm reading that based
Okay.
on that. So
All right,
that was
let's
one of
see.
the things
Is
I
that the
changed.
code that applied when we did the review?
The previous code applied.
So did we? That's what we should
Okay.
pull up
Yeah.
in this instance.
Yeah.
And that, I think we have it online, don't we?
Overall start site height and stories for sloping lots. Where a lot slopes downward from the front property line, 1 story that is additional to the specified maximum number of stories may be built on the lower rear portion of the lot.
Yeah. And so,
Rear.
yeah. So where it slopes down from the primary lot line, which it's doing. I mean, I know
But
what
it's
you're-
not
you're
going
trying
to the rear anymore. Once upon a time it was rear.
Well, you're confusing. You're confusing the lot line designations for what we would consider the rear.
What else would you mean?
It's a different situation here on the property. Obviously, the rear is on the side against the alley. Yeah, I mean, this zone district is really flexible in how the lot lines are designated. So, we had to take it at the lot line designations in the old code are independent of what we classified as the rear. Because the key phrase was where it slopes down from the primary lot line. And the primary lot line is 29th, and it's sloping down from the primary lot line.
I don't agree, but in any case,
Yeah.
that's not going to change
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
I don't agree, in any case.
Understand.
All right? So let's go back to the other one. My other notes. Notes. If you have a newer version of the language there, I'd appreciate having it, because there were some amendments.
It's all online.
Huh?
It's all online.
It's the one that's online.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're reading the same thing.
Well, the new version doesn't apply to this project. So.
The new version doesn't.
So the code was amended during the period of time when this set of plans was being reviewed. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's
So-
correct. And then it was approved. City Council built in a grace period for projects that were under review, so it wasn't like throwing a light switch, right? If you're under review, you had, I forget the amount of time that they built in.
6 months.
Was it 6 months?
Yeah.
You had 6 months from the time City Council adopted those amendments to finish your project under the old code, or under the zoning code as it was prior to the amendments.
214.
Or you could elect to follow the code as it.
Okay, so now there's a different language in that. Let's say the amended version than what we're talking about. There is it removes the word rear, or gives a clearer explanation of what slope and which
So
direction.
neither call out the rear zone lot line, which is what's causing the confusion in this case. It talks about the rear area of the zone lot from the front, or from the primary street zone lot line. I believe the old version said the front.
All right.
I mean, on 99% of maybe not even that much, but on the majority of lots, the zone lot line designations are pretty standard. The front is at the street, the rear is opposite of the front, and the sides are, are the other two.
Right.
But in this particular zone district, on corner lots, there's a whole different set of rules that apply. So the applicant actually gets to set the primary and side street.
And then
we set the rear and the side, and it's based upon a handful of criteria. And the handful of
they
criteria,
can have it amended
Yeah.
as well,
Yeah.
except for the side street.
Yeah, because
And I don't think you can have two rear lots. Can
No.
you? There's something in there I can't remember.
you can have two side interiors if you wanted.
You may, yeah.
But that has to be. That's on a multi-block, usually a
Right,
multi-block
it's
frontage and
something
stuff like that. Yeah. So.
It's okay. All right. Upper story setback enclosure done. Oops. Here's a favorite. Entrance is facing south. Okay, I'm past the general form is, I don't know if you've been following all this. I'm way past that. General form is a townhouse form is a general form. I get it. All right. It says residential use. So some shape and form, there's going to be a residential or can be residential use units there. Mm-hmm. What form they're going to take exactly, who knows. But one thing for sure, right, is that they got to follow the what? Design features and special, what is it they call it?
The ground story activation standards.
Applicable section, building story form standards, district specific standards, general, right? That's correct, right? So, I think I'll back up a little bit. I think the only, in my opinion, but whatever that counts, is the only building form that's allowed there, really. Where is it at? Way down at the bottom. Okay. Or USUC,
is that right?
Drive-through services
USU.
and drive-through restaurants.
UMX, we're UMX2.
Oh, we're UMX2.
UMX2, right.
Okay.
There's no maximum number of buildings you can have or uses on the site, right?
So you have
primary structures.
You have 3 building forms that you can build under. You're right, the 2 drive-throughs and the general building form.
General. And it's zoned, it's mixed use, so it can have household living, various types, whatever's permitted down there in the chart, and then eating and drinking establishments, so on and so forth, as far as commercial use, right?
Retail, office.
But, that one, I could sit there and say for sure, without beyond a shadow of a doubt, is allowed on that lot. But in any case, what I'm saying, going back to, is the form standards. Okay, we agreed it's a general building form. All right. But all right, you know where I was going. Design elements, ground story activation, pedestrian access, primary street, entrance. That's it.
They have to have an entrance off the primary street into the building. They have to have one entrance off the primary street into the building.
Each.
That's a minimum standard.
No, for the building. For the building.
Wait a minute. Because we got a different we got a different definition of a building here. It's either a primary structure, right?
So
we got 12 different
I know where
primary
you're going,
structures here. Correct?
I know where you're going. So, so the way that it's is that each building should have a the building has to have at least one entrance off the primary street. But if there's an exception in the code that says where you have multiple buildings on it and the first building meets the build to and other standards, then the second building doesn't have to.
Get it out. I don't think that applies to this.
Yeah.
I don't think that applies to. I read it. I don't think it applies to these zoned districts. But in any case, I know what you're talking about. I think that's in 10 limitations, isn't it?
Yeah, multiple buildings on a zone lot.
Right.
Let's find that one.
10.3.1, 10.3-1 page number.
Yeah.
Applies to all zone districts and building forms that have a required build-to and that allow multiple primary structures. The exception is when primary and side street build-to are met for the entire zone lot and the surface parking location and street-level activation standards are met for those buildings being used to meet the required build-to. Additional buildings on the site are not subject to the build-to, surface parking location, and street-level activation standards.
Is that design set? That's 10. Design set.
10.3.
Page 10.3-1. Section 10.3.3.1 A and B.
So the northern building is meeting the primary build-to requirements. There is no side street build-to requirements, and meeting the transparency aspect. Therefore, this southern building doesn't have to have an entrance facing the primary street.
Primary street build-to. That's what it is. Maybe that was in the language. When primary and side street build-to are met for the entire zone lot, for the surface parking location and ground story activation, standards are met for those buildings being used to meet the required build-to. Additional buildings on the site are not subject to the build-to surface parking location and ground story activation requirements. So in that sense, as the diagram shows, if you're going to have a parking lot there, okay, and it's going to have you've got all your other 2 buildings or 3 buildings or how many you have facing and meeting the primary street access requirement. You don't necessarily have to have those back buildings facing or touching the primary street, except for by some type of conveyance, either the parking lot or the.
No, they're just not applicable, is what it's saying. So there's 3 different things going on there. There's the parking location. So if you were to eliminate this building, the parking would be between the street and the building, which is not allowed in there. So they're saying that doesn't apply. So this building meets all the build to and ground story activation standards for the zone lot. Therefore, what happens with this building is irrelevant when it comes to it comes to either the parking or the ground story activation standards.
Well, you still have to have access from the primary street to the primary uses of these buildings.
It's been met with the northern building. If this building was only half of what it is, it wouldn't be meeting the build to standards. Therefore, any other building on the site would have to meet the build to. But it meets all the requirements of the zone district. So the secondary building doesn't have to meet those requirements as far as the urban design standard.
How about primary street activation? How about
that's
signaling to the passing public where the entrances of the buildings are?
Well, I
because
mean, you do have that happening on the side street here, right? You have a direct connection to the side street to this building. So I mean, even though that's not a requirement, you do have that happening.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's a corner lot. So it has 2 streets.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your traditional orientation would be facing the secondary street or the primary street, whichever you determine those are. Not what you're doing is you're activating a
side interior.
A side interior.
Yeah. No. So
I don't think that's in any type of interpretation of the code. That's what it's meant.
Well,
there's no requirement to activate the side interior, right? But there's no limitation.
What do I have
Just
to
like
say,
at your house,
please?
you can have as many houses.
Please don't do that. You know what you're going to create or creating in this situation here?
So we are not advocating this outcome within the zone district, but it's allowed, and so that's why you see. You're right. The side interior is traditionally a more passive space, which is why you see some of these restrictions of what's allowed in what's not allowed in the side interior versus what's allowed in the rear or the side street, like patios and canopies and other things. So, but it doesn't preclude complete use. It doesn't preclude using the side interior. At all. So it's not there's not restrictions on any activity happening in that space. It is more restrictive.
Pedestrian access. Let me read it. To provide clear, obvious connections for pedestrians between primary streets and primary uses within the building. Right.
Yeah. So the northern building meets that. Therefore, the southern building doesn't have to. I mean, this could be all open. The building doesn't have to be there. It could be all open, but they put another building there.
Well, like I said, what you're going to do, not you, but they are going to do is they're going to create a situation that's just because of the nature of the neighborhood. You've got over here, you got TT Mart, a liquor store. Over there on the eastern side, you got subsidized housing. Down below us, you got Section 8 housing. And already that alley becomes a thoroughfare. And then across the street, you got Tennis Center for Children. They escape all the time, you know. But what happens already right now is you have gang activity in the area, transients, people coming up from Sloan's Lake, and further down you got Sloan's Lake. They're drawn to the commercial retail either for candy or for alcohol or for beer, or where it might be. And then, since, you know, I mean, it doesn't have anything to do with code, but just what's going on. And then since recently they stopped letting people use the bathrooms in these retail outlets and let their patrons, okay? The reason why I put up a fence, plus to keep the kids from Tennyson Center out, that's a traumatic experience if you've been there and did that, is that you have people coming in behind this wall, behind our wall, urinating, defecating, drugging, graffitiing, you know. So you put up a fence. Now what you're going to do is you're going to open up a via way, activating it, okay, from the alley to the retail places and back. And it's going to devalue both of our properties, not just mine,
Yeah, so,
but theirs.
So they
it's
can,
going to
they
require
can,
more maintenance.
I get what you're saying. They could put up a fence there. They could put up a gate. They could secure it, and
Right.
they probably will at some point. They just don't show it on the site plan.
But
yeah,
you know, and that sort of common sense is how I interpret the code, because though it's permitted and though it's not prohibited, okay, at least when I interpret the code, okay, I interpret the code as, you know, we're going to have traffic moving more or less in the same way. We're going to increase density. That's another issue that I want to talk about. But we're not going to do something that's so doggone radical as to discombobulate the whole block. You know? That's crazy. I mean, I'm telling you, it's bad. But
what, the townhomes?
yeah.
Well, so
that's bad.
I mean, you can look at what.
Yeah.
I mean, even under the previous zoning, this would be permitted. And in fact, the previous zoning probably was a little bit more lenient in where the setbacks were, because you had a building right on your property line.
Previous zoning, but like I
Yeah.
said,
So-
when I look to interpret things, you know, maybe I take it from a different eye, you know.
Well,
But when I start interpreting things and reading
well-
things, and you know, certainly I've apparently missed certain phases or.
when the new zoning was applied, one of the key objectives was on these commercial lots was to maintain the existing zoning, not to downzone, not to upzone, but maintain. And so what was replacing the B2 was an equivalent type zone district with a little bit slightly different development standards, but for the most part they're more protective of the adjacent single family uses. And so, I mean, looking at the bigger picture, this could be a restaurant with a parking lot in the back. This could be an office building. This could be something else. But it's a residential product that they're proposing. So I mean, it's higher intensity
within
than
the
yours,
hours
but-
of operations. I mean, there's certain traffic that you're not going to eliminate. Okay, but you know, you're going to have. You know, I mean, in your previous email, you wrote me something about, well, they're going to be using the garages for their primary entrances. Well, you're going to draw postmen, flyer taggers, flyer distributors, solicitors of every sort, FedEx, pizza delivery guys, and then now, you know, right down that alley where basically for the past 50 years, well, more than that, it's been a private property line. Okay? And then you're going to have the trespassers, or what do you want to call the people that want to cut through people's yards. Now, they can put it up with the fence and block that out and eliminate that. But you're increasing this density, and that's what I want to get into on this block. There's 21 units on this block. You're increasing it, almost 60%? So now...
So, Brian, you understand that there are certain property rights that are
Yes,
associated
I
with
understand.
different
Oh, man,
zone
I'm a big property
districts.
right now.
And by saying, you know, you obviously know it's not Jeff and Chris,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But the property owner is taking advantage of the development rights that are entitled or that are associated with that property.
Who's the developer, by the way? You know?
Brian Gilbert, I think is the developer.
Brian Gilbert.
So in terms of
I mean,
different roles...
you mean Steve Gilbert?
So Steve Gilbert, yeah.
Excuse me.
So-
He's the construction manager, right? But the actual developer, you know who he is? They are?
The only applicant that we have on the application form is the architect.
Okay.
So,
All right, thank you. I'm sorry.
So I guess I was just saying in terms of, you know, the purpose of this conversation is really just to clarify how the code is being applied. And there are you have specific nuanced concerns related to the specific location and the existing conditions and that type of things, which are absolutely valid because that's the world you live in, that's the world your mother lives in, that's what you experience every day. But in terms of our role, the role that we play here in development services and CPD, is we are required to enforce and apply the zoning regulations. So the purpose of this meeting was just to describe for you how we do that process. Right. We don't have that leeway to, above and beyond these requirements, hold this property owner to anything that isn't tied to something that we have purview over. Mm-hmm. So I guess in terms of density, it's not Jeff saying whether or not he thinks it's the right density or not. It's here's the zoning. Here's what. So long as you play within these rules, then you're.
In other words, I'm going to get back to it. This sort of like this extra zoning code itself. This goes back to the comprehensive plan. This goes back to the plans that went back into creating the comprehensive plans, which sort of like dictate how you should interpret code, in my opinion. I mean, basically the zoning code is the fulfillment or implementation plan of the comprehensive plan, is it not?
And Blueprint Denver and
any other sort of
neighborhood
plans. There's a Greenprint Denver, there was Metro Vision, there was this, and everything's and these since about 1965, and these, I think it was in response to a flood plan, the Kurgan administration, they all agglomerated together and made a comprehensive plan. Right. Okay, so there were some specific goals in there, and one of those goals was to increase, from my reading, and you can see how accurate my reading is, so take that for whatever it's worth, because maybe I got the anti this development tinted glasses on when I read stuff. But the density in these neighborhoods were supposed to be increased by 10% by 2035. There was supposed to be a mixed thing, and following the reactivation of the neighborhood centers, which I enjoy seeing. Every 6 blocks is neighborhood centers here. But they were supposed to have a 10% increase in residential and a 75% increase in business and retail, things like that, so that people could walk to work and play and have right within their hut, just like the olden days, so that reduces miles per
vehicle miles traveled,
travel, gasoline, air pollution, makes everything more affordable, so what you're not spending on gasoline you spend on a house, and all this kind of things. It all fits. And that's why I say, when I look at it again and say, this was a retail outlet once upon a time, and that's why the zoning says it's more adapt for a drive-through or some type of eating and drinking establishment, or even a commercial, an office building. Okay, so that you can build up and then achieve the goals that were set by, let's say, the comprehensive plan. Okay. When you set a standard like that, I don't know how you would even begin to calculate it, either block by block or zip code by zip code or neighborhood by neighborhood. How are you going to sit there and monitor the 10% growth? You see what I'm saying? I calculated this out as being an increase of density of 57%. That's way beyond. 6 units would be more appropriate.
Oh, I see what
okay, you see what I'm saying? But you're right. It's not in the code, and it's nothing, for you to enforce, I guess, because it's not in code, and it's the developer that's taking advantage of.
Right. You're suggesting that perhaps there's an overall cap to development within this area.
Exactly.
And I don't know that that's exactly the way that zoning works as a tool. Rather, what there's a zoning district, there's a zoning designation that's applied to this area here in the red that affords each property owner independent development rights. So it's not like if this guy uses up all of the development, then this guy can't, right? So each one of them has their own individual.
Yeah, but there's an exchange.
Questioning whether or not the zone district is an appropriate sort of way to implement that vision, that's a legitimate conversation to have. outside of a specific development proposal, which is what we're here this afternoon talking about. So I want to validate and hear and acknowledge that I hear what you're saying in terms of the overall
What I'm saying
your
is,
perception of a mismatch between the vision and then the actual
Exactly.
implementation. I hear you, but I'll say that that's off the back
that's
of
off
these
the
guys
bat.
here.
But like I said, once again, just not to beat it to death, but you have pretty much you have a lot of infill opportunities here.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of, let's say, one-to-one exchanges. Single-family homes for single-family homes, you can put pop the roof. And
Maybe it's a bigger single-family home, but it's still a
exactly.
single-family home.
But more or
Sure.
less, because the area is already dense, it's something like 1,493 or 92 housing units per square mile already, and that was 2006.
Right.
I think that was the average they wanted to get throughout the city is
Right.
1,493, if I'm not mistaken.
So you're
We're already past
Sounds
that.
like you're talking about DRCOG regional
Is
goals.
that right?
I think that's what those are coming from, is the DRCOG regional goals, MetroVision.
My Metrovisions, that might be it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that the area is already overdeveloped. Like I said, this is not part of this.
Well, and it's a regional average, right? So some areas you get more. I mean, that's the whole premise of and we're talking out bigger picture. The whole premise of DRCOG, I think it was like they had a certain percentage of new development needed to go into designated urban centers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But overall, that would drive the regional density up, even though like most of the single family would stay the same. So I mean, your point's well taken, but it's not a net. The regional goal is not a net 10% increase on every piece of property. It's region wide, and so if there might be a city goal to increase density, but if you redo blueprint Denver, it's most of it's directed towards areas of change. What are designated areas of change?
Which-
And so
I'm just going to interrupt real quick because I'm running late now.
Okay, well, thank you
It was great
for-
to meet you.
Yeah, I appreciate it,
I'm
your
hoping
time,
that we
you
can
know.
clear up any other remaining questions you have.
Like I said, I don't know what I came here expecting, but at least I got some answers.
At some
I mean,
point,
I just want to relay though that we do a really thorough review of these projects, and these guys pushed the limits of what was allowed, and we caught that initially, and they modified their project based upon those requirements to meet the standards, and what we approve meets the standards, and it wasn't just a casual review. I mean, and we even suggested that they meet with you. We even suggested changes above and beyond what's required by the code to kind of lessen the impact. Now, I know nothing is going to totally lessen the impact of a much taller development adjacent to your ranch home, and nothing I can say is going to change that. But we tried to do what was best with what we were allowed to do. Yeah.
It's going to impact me personally very little. Because this is a rental property for us, 50 years, right? And we had people in it. I haven't seen whole lot, of people being squeamish about where they're going to live, especially in this side of town, because of the lack of rentals. They seem to enjoy it. They don't like the noise. They love the privacy. That's one of the things I put on my thing, but maybe that's neither here or there. It's going to impact my mother more. It's her property, and my brother, because it's destined to him.
Yeah.
So me personally, when I first heard it, it was like somebody telling you you're going to have a proctology exam. It's going to hurt. It's going to be uncomfortable, but it might even turn out well with some good news. So I had mixed feelings, right? I think, as I went into this, it's going to devalue both properties. Where they could, like I said, it's neither here or there because you have no control over it. But and I've expressed that to the builder already in meeting. I think it should be far less dense. I think you should have about half as many. He could accomplish the same thing with the upgrading. They build stuff that I don't know if familiar with what they build, but their price point is $450. There's for the 2.2 young family with 2.2 kids, a dog, and so on and so forth, and blah, 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 right? So
we're wrapping up, yeah.
okay. I guess you got other people's schedule. But they could do 6 units, upgrade the neighborhood, 750, 700 point, right? They sell like hotcakes here, and everybody would be happy. They would be happy, everybody would be happy.
Yeah, and I'm not.
You know?
Yeah, and it's ultimately, and I get where you're coming from.
Right.
It's ultimately their decision what they think they can sell based upon the market, and
I'm just saying.
I know, so I completely get it.
Yeah,
I completely get it.
But that's all beyond. And thank you for taking your time with me. I just want to get back to height and stories. You said, now once again, I can't sit there and tell from height and stories whether they're that 6 foot from the base plane, and I guess this is what's important, that's correct. You know what I mean? Do you have that? Do you have that illustration
just
here?
To wrap it up really quick, nobody is disputing the fact that the southern building is a 3-story building. It's a 3-story building under the code, under every measurement we have, every standard we have to determine stories and so forth. But it's allowed.
By its skin of the teeth, maybe.
Yeah. So, but the key is though is that 35-foot height limit that's on that zone district is fairly similar to what if you were to rebuild your house or your mom's house on that lot. It's a similar height allowance. So somebody can come in and build a 2.5, 3-story building on that property, and it would be about
30-foot height limit.
30 foot with additional height based upon the width of the lot. So I mean, the disconnect is not there. Right now, it's a huge disconnect between what you have a ranch and what they're proposing.
Well, I just want to make sure the height and stories are right. The height, because now in this last plan, I believe there was introduced a mezzanine in there.
Well, that was for this unit right here. Yeah,
and
this corner unit.
When I drew this plan on this with very little dimensions, okay, what I could see was that there was an allowance not to be a story on that corner lot, right? And I think you called them out on it one time.
Yeah, which is why they came back and did the mezzanine thing. Yeah, so the mezzanine is a floating deck inside a.
But this was below grade. On the first floor.
This unit is actually at grade on the garage in the first floor. It's a handicap accessible unit. This garage is at grade. It's not below grade. That's why it's accessed directly off the alleyway. They have a small ground floor space in here actually, and then they have another story above that with a mezzanine in it. I think we have floor plans in here somewhere.
So to sum it up, okay. All these units here they're individual units. Even though they're wall by wall, connected together by walls, they're, let's see, I'm losing the track here. Let's see, primary structures, right? You call them primary structures.
Yes, this is the building, and within the building, the use is a multi-dwelling unit.
Okay, within the building. So each building, this is the primary structure, building 1 and 2. You know, so I got it.
Yeah.
So that's not called the primary structure or main primary structure.
Each unit is not an individual structure. Is I think what you're getting at.
Each unit is not an individual.
Yeah.
That's even more confusing.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can wrap it up. I'm sure you got better things to do. I just, like I said, if you can just show me where the height and stories for the rest of that's not being counted.
Yeah. So
this shows the N unit, and I guess where's the mezzanine here? Right here.
No, this is the southern building. This is a 3-story building. 1 story, 2 story, 3 stories.
This is the north building.
The south building, isn't it? Oh, I'm
This
sorry.
is south building.
You're right. I'm sorry. So this is not showing the N unit. This is not showing the N unit very clearly. This is showing the interior units.
So what I'm interested in is this dimension right here, from here to the.
Yeah. So this is like a middle
Where's the
thing.
base plane here?
This is not for purposes of height. This diagram, it's just a cross section of the building.
Okay.
So you're right. This is 2 stories because it doesn't trip. Let me go through this really quick.
Do you have a detailed drawing that I can look at that shows a section like this? That shows me a section.
I don't have it right. Maybe the building
People
plan
do?
sets have, but I don't have one yet.
That's what I need.
But you're asking the 4 criteria. So
you said that they were in violation of B or possibly in violation of B and C.
Yeah, on the initial one because the finished floor level of this story right here was greater than 6 feet above grade or
Right.
more than 50%. They lowered that, and it's no longer greater than 6 feet for more than 50% of the perimeter. In fact,
That's a northern building.
yeah. But which is the one that is more restrictive? It's a 2-story. So if you look at the initial submittals, if you looked at the initial submittals, the finished floor of this second story
Right.
is about 7 feet above grade.
That wasn't too far off.
Yeah, and on the garage side it was taller, right? It's about 12 feet. On the revised submittal, the finished floor, at the maximum one, which is about this unit, the finished floor is only 5 feet above the adjacent grade, and it's less than 6 feet along this facade, along the eastern facade, and along the western facade. So no more than 50% of the building is less than 6 feet above the grade, the second story. So they lowered the building to meet that standard. That's how they did it. They actually lowered the building.
Mm-hmm. And they didn't have to lower the southern building.
No, because the extra story. No point in even trying because they were allowed that extra story.
See, that's what I was saying. In the diagrams they show you, you basically have your base plane or your primary street, right? Here's your building, okay? And then you have a grade. Now, our grade, or that grade, if we're questioning here, is more like this.
Yeah,
Okay.
the code doesn't speak to house.
Yeah. So they get a whole extra story.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense.
But they still have to maintain the 35-foot height. So they might get an extra story, but
So,
it's only 35 feet.
Back to my argument again. Context. Density.
In context, it's very similar to what you're permitted to do on your lot.
Well, because of the height, 35.
Yeah.
But then density and, what I'm saying? No.
But it's a different zone district. It's a mixed-use zone district, which is why they allow more density on that.
Neighborhood context.
But it's always been a non-residential or commercial or mixed-use zone. It's always been that way.
That's good. We'll go round and round forever. And you know what? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just saying what it was. It was always that, and it remains that to this day. Whether we agree about it or not, you have valid arguments, but that is something that is not in place today. So
I guess it's a pretty hot issue.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's becoming more and more hot.
You are correct.
As I guess, as you read the papers and as building goes on and people's
You're absolutely right.
see what
And whether this council
they
decides,
rot,
whether
because
this council
everybody
decides-
that I knew was behind the new zoning change, right? Now they're seeing it actually become a reality. They're not so much
But
behind.
again, to Jeff's earlier point, this could have been done under the old B2 as well. This exact
Right,
project.
right.
So
But-
there's some things where the code changed, right? The applicable standards on the ground.
They
There's some
wanted-
things, like in this case, where it didn't change it a bit.
Right. They wanted a change for the better.
We're seeing an unprecedented surge of growth in the city of Denver, and as a region, not just the city. And, quite frankly, those people...
I hope we don't overdevelop. You know what the biggest problem is? Water.
Yes. Talk to California.
Oh, yeah.
They tell you-
Hey, at least they got the ocean they can dump all their garbage into.
Yeah,
We don't
they
got
burn-
any of that.
They don't burn up first.
Take care. Thank you very much. Let me get out of here. Get out of your hair. Thank you very much.